Welcome to another episode of the PFF College Football Show. Max Chadwick alongside Dalton Wassman. And Dalton, last week we did our midseason All-American team. This week, we're going to do our midseason awards, and there are a ton of awards in college football to give out after every year. So we're going to give out who we think should be the winners of all of those awards at the midway point of the season.
Yeah, and there's some great players on this list, some breakouts on this list. I mean, you've got some of the biggest names in college football who've been making the biggest plays in college football this year, and you got guys even here winning multiple of these awards. I know you see that sometimes, but we've got, I think even especially in some of these spots, some guys who we really didn't expect to be this high on the list for some of these.
No, absolutely not. So we're going to go basically back to front. We'll end off with the Heisman Trophy to make sure, it's a little, just get the viewers to stay the whole time, basically. We're not going to start off with the big ones. We'll start off with the smaller ones that are still very, very important, though, Dalton. Starting off with the Frank Broyles Award, which is given to the best assistant coach in college football every year. Who is our winner of that award?
Tell you what, we got to look at your Penn State Nittany Lions, and they hired their new offensive coordinator, Andy Kotelnicki. We've talked about him a lot this year, and bringing that scheme that he brought from Kansas that really, we talked about that team for a while with him punching above their weight class, right? Punching above their talent level. Well, Penn State is not a team short on talent, and he's using it to perfection. They're 8th in the country right now in offensive grade, still undefeated, one of the highest scoring teams in the Big Ten. I mean, it's just so much smoother than it was last year, right? It's so much more diverse. Last year, their offense felt so vanilla, so stiff. There was times, especially when they were behind in games, where they just had no answers. But he's using all of the talent that he has. He's maximizing it. Drew Allar looks so much more confident than he did last year. Tyler Warren's become one of the best tight ends in the game. And I'll tell you, I just love watching this offense. All of the shifting, all of the motions, all the different formations, everything he puts into it. Sometimes he goes tempo, sometimes he doesn't. Eddie Kotelnicki's done a spectacular job at Penn State this year, turning that offense around, which it was really a stiff unit last year. They just could not score points in big moments, and we're going to find out if they do it in big moments this year, but so far it's been an A-plus job from Kotelnicki.
I hate giving him, as a Penn State fan, I hate giving him this award because that means he's probably not going to be the offensive coordinator for Penn State much longer. He might be a head coach very soon. Speaking of head coaches, the Home Depot Coach of the Year award giving out to the best head coach in college football every year, and there's a lot of names we could have gone with this award, but we decided on Curt Cignetti from Indiana because last year, before Cignetti got there, Indiana went 3-9. They were one of the worst teams in the Power 5, and now they're 7-0. They have a very good chance of making the college football playoff right now. They play Ohio State, but other than that, if they can win their other games, which is very possible, they play Washington and Michigan and schools like that. All of a sudden, you're talking about a playoff team from a team that went 3-9 last year to a playoff team in Curt Cignetti's first year at Indiana is unbelievable. There was a lot of people that laughed at Curt Cignetti when he got introduced last year at the Big Ten championship game, and he said, "Oh, we'll be here next year." And we're like, "Okay, Curt, yeah, sure, we'll see." They actually might be there in Indianapolis, honestly, and he's a great guy. He's a great quote machine, honestly, and he's a hell of a coach as well. And with all those transfers they brought in, specifically from James Madison, where Curt Cignetti was before, Indiana turned this around overnight, it seems like. So Curt Cignetti, for us at least, is the coach of the year.
Yeah, no, I mean, you see the turnaround they have at Indiana, and he brought in all that talent from James Madison. Obviously, Curtis Rourke is playing great. They just got a great football team. That's a real situation there that Indiana's a playoff contender, and it's because of Cignetti and all the guys he brought in the portal.
Absolutely. So you have the next award, which is the Joe Moore Award, given every year to the best offensive line as a unit in college football. The Rare Team Award that we'll do today with Don. Who is the best offensive line in the country?
I think a surprising one that we wouldn't have gone with at the beginning of the year, considering how they played last year, especially offensively, and sometimes it's still a struggle, but how about the Iowa Hawkeyes up front and what they're doing, getting back to their old ways on the offensive line. 86.4 pass blocking grade as a unit, 84.2 run blocking grade. They're the highest graded offensive line in the Power 5. It's just been opening holes for Caleb Johnson, especially. You can feel it in the running game that, with Tim Lester as their new offensive coordinator, they've gone to a little bit different scheme, a little more of an outside zone scheme, and their run game especially has just been spectacular. Iowa's offensive line has made their offense a lot better. Now, I mean, they just need to fix up some things in the passing game as far as their skill players as usual, but man, their O-line has given them a chance to win every week. They've been spectacular.
It feels like all is right in the world now. And Iowa, once again, has an elite offensive line. They've been known for having elite offensive lines in the past, with guys like Brandon Scherf and Tristan Wirfs going there, and now, again, they have an elite offensive line this year. The next one we're talking talking about is the Burlsworth Trophy, which goes out to the best player who started his career as a walk-on. And Dalton, the best player who started his career without a scholarship, in our opinion, this year is Will Brooks, the safety from Tennessee. He has a top 15 grade among all safeties in college football this year with an 84.3 mark. He also has an 88.5 coverage grade. That is 8th among all safeties in college football. This is always a very hard award to do research for because it's really hard to figure out, okay, who started their career as a walk-on. But when I found out that Will Brooks started his career as a walk-on, I was like, oh yeah, this guy's an easy fit for this award because he has really been one of the best safeties in college football this year and a big part of why Tennessee's defense has been so good this year.
Yeah, and he had that game-winning interception against Tennessee as well. So, I mean, no, he's made a big impact. He's been a big reason that Tennessee, especially the back end of their defense, that we kind of questioned coming into the season. We knew their D-line and James Pierce would be pretty good, and they were finding some depth around it, but we really questioned all the youth on the back end, and Will Brooks has been a big part of their success.
Absolutely. So next one we're talking about is the Sean Alexander Freshman of the Year Award, which you can guess is the best freshman in college football. Dalton, there are a lot of players that could have fit for this best freshman, including 2 receivers that we really came down to, but we went with the guy who actually went to the same school as Sean Alexander.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I mean, first of all, what a freshman class that we've had this season. You talk about, especially on the offensive side. And there's some defensive guys, too. You talk about Dylan Stewart of South Carolina, but look, it was tight, but we went with Ryan Williams from Alabama, like you mentioned. Look, 649 receiving yards already on a 1,000-yard pace. He's already become Alabama's best skill player. I mean, the deep threat that he gives, he's a perfect match with Jalen Milroe, scored 7 touchdowns. And, you know, and only 17 years old, as has been mentioned so many times. He's already one of the best deep threats in college football. And Alabama, they've really seen now that their success is going to ride through him. He got 19 targets against Tennessee last week. And I'll tell you what, he could have had a lot bigger day if Jalen Milroe was making some of the throws. But Williams, the speed, the body control, the hands, I mean, just making the biggest plays in the biggest moments. Some of the most iconic plays this season in all of college football have been made by Ryan Williams at Alabama. For the next couple of years, he's going to be really fun to watch. Him and you mentioned Jeremiah Smith too from Ohio State. This receiver class coming in 2027 is going to be incredible. It starts with those 2 guys, and Ryan Williams gets this award.
Absolutely, he has been unbelievable this year, and like I said, he should be a high school senior right now because he's only 17 years old. So it's crazy what he's doing in his first year at college football when he should be thinking about going to prom in a few months, honestly. But next one we're talking about is the Johnny the Jet Rodgers Award, which is the best return specialist in college football. And Dawn, we went with Rayshawn Pleasant, the cornerback from Tulane, for the simple fact of he has 2 return touchdowns this year. Nobody else in the country has multiple return touchdowns. So he's been an electric player on kickoffs, has one of the highest return grades in college football as well. Yeah, Rayshawn Pleasant, at least for us, was a pretty easy pick for this award.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just when you get multiple return touchdowns, man, that's what it's about, is flipping the game upside down, getting those special teams touchdowns, making those big plays. Definitely deserving.
Absolutely. So next one we're talking about is another special teams award, the Ray Guy Award for the best punter in college football. Don, who we go with here?
This is actually a really fun one because I just love the stats here. Brett Thorson from Georgia. As if Georgia needs any more tools in the box. They have the best punter in the country. 94.2 punting grade, which is 3.5 points better than anybody else. Here's the thing, though. Last year, he did not allow a single punt to be returned, okay? And you sit there and you go, okay, if you don't allow a punt to be returned, a punter is really doing his job when you think about it, if there's no opportunity to return it, unless he's booming it out of the end zone, which he's not supposed to, but he's been terrific last year. This year, somehow it's even better. It almost makes no sense that you can be better than not allowing any punt returns. This year, there's been 3 returns, and credit to his coverage unit, 3 returns for a total of -9 yards. Somehow it's terrific the job he's doing, the job that Georgia's special teams units are doing. It's the third part of what makes a great team great, right? But Brett Thorson, for really 2 years in a row, you could argue, has been the best punter in college football, and he's been that by far this year.
Absolutely. I think he has to lead the nation in hang time as well, which is a really, really critical stat.
Yep, sure does.
For punters as well. What's the exact number?
4.64 seconds average
insane.
hang time. That's terrific.
Stupid, man. That's stupid. Pat McAfee would love that. So, yeah, Brett Thorson, Ray Guy Award winner. The Luke Grozer Award goes out to the best kicker in college football, and we went with Ben Sauls from Pittsburgh, who's currently 5th in field goal grade this year at 91.1. But the reason why I went with him over the guys above him is because the guys above him have missed a field goal this year or a kick. He has not missed a kick so far. He's 10 for 10 on field goals. He's 28 for 28 on extra points as well. 3 for 3 from 50-plus yards. 2 for 2 from 40-plus yards, or really 5 for 5 from 40-plus yards. He has been unbelievable this year and literally has not missed a kick, field goal, or extra point. So Ben Sauls from Pitt gets our vote right as of right now. It's a close race the rest of the year, but he right now, in our opinion, should win the Lou Groza Award for the best kicker in the country.
Yeah, look, Pitt playing a lot of close games. All 4 of their Power 5 games that they've won so far, pending the Syracuse result, which we're recording before that game is on. So when this comes out, we're not sure right this minute what the score will be. We'll find out, see if your Syracuse Orange got it done. But they're playing a lot of close games, and having a good kicker is a big part of that.
Absolutely. So, Dalton, maybe the easiest award of all of them to give out. Actually, there are a couple other ones that are pretty easy, but this one is a no-brainer. It's a Paul Hornung Award for the most versatile player in college football, and this guy would win this award every single year if we could.
It's the man who's redefining versatility, right? That's Travis Hunter from Colorado. How much more versatile can you be than playing wide receiver full-time and cornerback full-time? And as long as he's relatively healthy, he's going to win this award. There was a stretch before he got injured where he was playing close to 130 snaps a game. Talk about a guy who's in the top 10 in both receiving grade and coverage grade. He's the best player on the field on offense. He's the best player on the field on defense. And you can feel when he is injured, he's not out there, the amount of value he has on both sides of the ball. And Colorado's done a nice job filling in for him, but Travis Hunter's Travis Hunter. I mean, he's just doing historic things. If he can play the majority of this season, he's going to be an inner circle Heisman contender. We've just never seen anyone do what Travis Hunter's done before, right? You could honestly rename this award after him if you wanted to. It's just it's unbelievable the amount of talent he has. There's going to be debates about which side, or if he can play both at that level at the NFL, or if it's a part-time at one or full-time at the other. But regardless, this is the most talented football player in the country, and the fact that he can play both positions in the same game at such an elite level is just incredible.
And Dalton, we've seen guys do it in college before, but never to this level. And also, we've never seen a guy do it in the NFL. And there's so many people, including us, that think, hey, he could do it in the NFL. He's that special, honestly. So the fact that he can do this in the NFL as well, yeah, he is easily the most versatile player in college football this year. Next one we're talking about is the Jim Thorpe Award, which is given out to the best defensive back in college football, whether it be a corner or a safety. We went with Jeanty Barron from Texas, who has been one of the best corners in college football this year, 86.7 grade. That is 4th among all corners in the country. He has 3 interceptions, 3 forced completions as well. He has just been a lockdown corner for Texas all year, honestly. And in a pass defense that has been really, really improved, a lot of it is due to their star corner, Jeanty Barron, being, in our opinion, at least so far, the best corner in college football this year.
I think it's so representative of, at least on one side of the ball, what's going on at Texas. When you talk about last year, the big struggle was covering, especially vertically down the field, and they needed guys. We knew Malik Muhammad was good. We knew Andrew Makuba would come in there and be good, but for Jeanty Barron to step up on the other side of Muhammad at the other cornerback spot, Texas right now has arguably the best secondary in the country. If they can figure things out now on offense, which is not something we expected to say, their defense looks like it's ready to win a national title.
Absolutely. He's been outstanding this year, and like I said, he's been one of the most locked down corners in the country, and in a year that we have a lot of lockdown corners, so it's saying a lot that we gave this award to Jeanty Barron. Next one we're talking about, Dalton, is the Butkus Award, which is given out to the best linebacker in college football. Who takes home this award?
Look, we got some really good performances throughout the country, but Jay Higgins from Iowa is so consistent week in and week out. He is as consistent a performer as there is. I think he's going to be taken on at least day 2 of the draft. 90.5 overall grade is second best in the country. 94.3 coverage grade. And of course at Iowa, all those guys can cover, but even the linebackers can. He's already got 2 interceptions this year. He's given up 15 catches for just 68 yards. He's one of the best tacklers in the country. He's only missed 7 tackles this year, which for the volume that he gets is pretty good. And a 39.2 NFL passer rating allowed into his coverage. Max, if you spike the ball into the ground every play, it's 39.6. So it's literally better to just throw the ball into the dirt than throw it at Jay Higgins right now. Iowa's always got a great coverage unit, but Jay Higgins in the middle has been arguably their best player, best linebacker in the country. He was one of our top 5 linebackers coming into the year. This isn't all that surprising at this spot. Jay Higgins just a really consistent force for Iowa.
He is outstanding.
Second, I guess, Hawkeye, really. Yeah, we had a a group of them before. The Iowa Hawkeyes pretty well represented.
Absolutely, yeah. He's now technically the 6th Hawkeye to win an award.
He could go there.
Yeah. So
certainly say it.
It's pretty impressive what he's done this year. And I always want to shout out Chris Paul Jr., the Ole Miss linebacker. He made this a very, very close race. I think he still can make it a close race. Obviously, you're only at the halfway point, but those two have been outstanding. I think those two have been kind of head and shoulders above any other linebacker in college football this year. Next one we're talking about is the Ted Hendricks Award, which is given out to the best defensive end in college football every year. We went with the highest graded defensive player in the country, and that is Josiah Stewart from Michigan. He's a 93.8 grade this year. It's about 4 points higher than any other edge defender in college football. He leads all edge defenders with a 93.7 pass rushing grade. He has a 29.1% pass rush win rate. That is about 8 points higher than anyone else in the Power 4 at his position. And honestly, the next two at his position in the Power 4 dome are both Michigan players, TJ Guy and Derek Moore. So it's been crazy what they've had at edge defender this year. When you thought the defensive line would have been the defensive tackle spot would have been the strength of that unit with Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant there, they've been both great, but also the Michigan's had some elite edge defenders this year, and Josiah Stewart's a big part of that, and he has a 90.2 run defense grade this year. That is third among all edge defenders in college football. So you're talking about the highest pass rushing grade in the country, the third best run defense grade in the country. He has been a dominant player, and this is not the only award he'll be getting today. I'll spoil that right now.
He's just been terrific, and it's another great player on maybe the hardest team up front to block in the country. You talked about Graham and Grant on the inside, but what Stewart's doing on the outside and maybe giving some opportunities to work one-on-one against these tackles, he's winning the battle every single week. He's actually, I might say, he's been their most consistent player on their entire team this season, and that says a lot considering some of the other talent they have.
Yeah, like I said, you'll get a couple more awards. Let's just put it out that way for the end of it. But next one we're talking about, Dalton, is the Remington Award, which is given out to the best center in college football every year. Who gets the Remington Award? Who's the best center in the country
Kind of a surprising one here. Let's take it down to Colorado State, and you've got Jacob Gardner, the center for the Rams. Look, leading the nation in overall grade, leading the nation in run blocking grade, and second in pass blocking grade among all centers. I mean, that's just silly when you're doing that. Only allowed one pressure, a hurry through 7 games. 226 pass blocking snaps in one pressure, dominant in the run game, dominant in the pass game down there. Look, Colorado State, they haven't won a ton of games this year, but they've got a great player playing center over there for them. I mean, he's just been terrific week in and week out. You talk about a guy in 4 of his 7 games who's graded at least an 80. I mean, he's consistent. He's again only one pressure all year, and that was to Oregon State. I mean, he's just been playing at a dominant level down there for the Rams.
Absolutely, yeah. We usually I'll point it right now. We usually try to go with a Power 4 player because the level of competition is obviously higher, but his grade and everything he's done this year has been much better than anyone else at his position. They're like, we have to recognize this guy for being the most dominant center in college football. So the next one, I'll skip this one. I'll go over it really quickly. Is the Rotary Lombardi Award, which is given to the best lineman in college football, offensive or defensive. Edge defenders are included in that, so we had to go with Josiah Stewart, the Michigan player. So he is our Lombardi Award winner. We just went over him already, how elite he's been this year, and he gets this award as well. So I'll skip to the next one, which is the Outland Trophy, given to the best interior lineman in college football. That does not include edge defenders. That includes offensive linemen and defensive tackles, I believe, are who's included in that award. Sometimes these awards get a little weird of who's actually included in it. So it's offensive linemen and defensive tackles. We'll go with Wyatt Milam, the offensive tackle from West Virginia, who we think has been the best offensive lineman in college football so far this year. 92.1 grade that leads all offensive tackles in college football. 88.7 pass blocking grade, that is 6th among all offensive tackles in college football, and a 90.1 run blocking grade that's tied for 2nd among all offensive tackles in college football. Don, he has been elite at both. Obviously, 85-plus grades at both. Nobody else in the country has 85-plus grades at both. And he is the only offensive lineman in college football, offensive tackle, I should say, with 0 pressures allowed on over 100 pass blocking snaps. And not only that, he has 193 pass blocking snaps. Nobody else even comes close to having 0 pressures allowed on that many snaps. So he has literally not a lot of pressure this year. He's played legitimate teams too. He's played Penn State with Abdul Carter, some other really good defensive lines in the Big 12 as well. And so he's an elite pass blocker, and he's been one of the best run blockers in college football. I've said it over and over again. I think Wyatt Milam is playing his way into the first-round conversation because he has been so freaking dominant on both sides this year.
Absolutely. I mean, that West Virginia offense can be really explosive, but none of it happens without the offensive line that they have. And Milam's he's the best player on that. He's the biggest reason for that. They've struggled on defense this year, but there hasn't really been too many struggles on offense. And Milam's really been their best player in the trenches and on their entire team.
Absolutely. So he deserves the Lombardi Award, given to the best interior lineman in college football. Then the next one is the John Mackey Award, which is given to the best tight end in college football. And ironically, we did our All-American team last week. We gave the tight end spot to Tyler Warren from Penn State, but we have a different winner for this award because this is a race that can come out in the final seconds, honestly.
No, it is. And look, you mentioned Warren, and I'll tell you what, he's got some real good competition down here at Bowling Green with Harold Fannin Jr. Let's just roll through some of the numbers real quick. 60 catches this season. Only 2 wide receivers have more than that this year, okay? 873 yards. Only 2 wide receivers have more than that this year. A 96.7 receiving grade, which is just beyond ridiculous. I don't even know how we can quantify how ridiculous that is, especially coming from the tight end spot. 495 yards after the catch. Leads all players, not just
That's
tight
absurd.
ends. Leads all players, 33 yards ahead of Trey Harris. Harold Fannin Jr. is a matchup nightmare, and this isn't even just a group of 5, he's tearing up the max sort of thing. We saw it against Penn State. He had, a 150-yard game against Penn State. He tore up Texas A&M early in that game as Bowling Green was hanging with them. This is legitimately, you may not think he's the best tight end in the country. Maybe there's, the Colston Loveland argument or Tyler Warren or whatever, but he's undoubtedly one of them, and he's a guy I think whose draft stock is flying up right now because he's just such a good athlete, can do so many things with the ball in his hands. Even had a game-winning touchdown on a jet sweep that they handed to him. Harold Fannin has been dominant week in and week out, and we kind of do the thing every week where it's like, oh, let's just check the box score just to see what Harold Fannin did today. Because, there's been games where he's had 100 yards in the first quarter. Just teeing off on teams, especially early in games, 60 catches and 873 yards would be a fantastic season for the entire year.
Oh, yeah, easily.
He's pacing 1,300 yards right now, probably close to 1,300 yards.
He's on pace for like 1,500 yards.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous what he's doing, and it's every single week. There isn't a week off with him when you look at it. His lowest, he had one game against Northern Illinois with 25 yards and another with 67. 5 others where he had at least 130. He's got 130 yards in 5 out of his 7 games. It's just ridiculous what Fannin is doing. One of the best tight ends, if not the best tight end in college football. He gets this award for just his absolute dominance week in and week out.
Yeah, we said it before on our review show that the record for tight end, at least what I can find, is 1,352 yards by Jason Marrow in 2013, I believe. And he's on pace for more than that. He's on pace for like 14. So he's on pace to break the single-season tight end receiving record. You got to give him the John Mackey Award, honestly, if he does all that. So we gave him the award for the John Mackey because he has been as close with him and Tyler Warren, because Tyler Warren's also putting up stupid numbers. But Harold Fannin Jr.'s numbers are just more absurd, honestly. Even though he plays in the MAC, like you said, he played against Penn State, he played against Texas A&M, and he was still dominant in both of those games. And those are 2 top 15 teams in college football right now. So he has been dominant no matter who he's playing against. Next one we're talking about, Dalton, is the Bolitnikoff Award, which is given to the best receiver in college football. And honestly, I thought about Harold Fannin Jr. for this one as well because tight ends are included in this award. But I stuck to wide receivers, and I did Trey Harris, the wide receiver from Ole Miss. Currently leads all receivers in college football with a 90.3 PFF grade this season. He has 987 receiving yards. It leads all players in college football. Leads all receivers by 83 yards as well. Leads all wide receivers in yards after the catch. Harold Fannin Jr. does have more yards after the catch, but receiving-wise, Trey Harris leads all wide receivers in that as well. He has 6 touchdown grabs as well. And Dalton was crazy about him. I just saw this. Yards per route run. How many receiving yards do you get per route? He is averaging 5.25 yards per route run this year. The next closest receiver is your guy, Ricky White, at 3.71. We're talking about a 1.5 yard difference per route run that Trey Harris is doing right now. He is quite literally feels like the Ole Miss offense entirely right now. And the numbers he's putting up are crazy. I mean, he's on pace to put up like 1,700, 1,800 yards right now. He's very close to hitting 1,000 already at the midway point of the season. So Trey Harris gets our pick for the Biletnikoff Award right now.
Look, you mentioned that yards per route run number. That's just ridiculous. And you know what he does vertically for the Ole Miss offense. That's a number you mentioned, 5.5 yards per route run. If you're over 3, you're playing at an elite level, and he's almost doubling that. It's just ridiculous how efficient he's been when they've been able to get him the football. I mean, there's been some issues on the Ole Miss offense, and Trey Harris certainly isn't one of them.
Yeah, like I said, 5.25. No other receiver is even above 3.75.
It's a different stratosphere that you so rarely see, and it just shows you how efficient he's been and how great he is when he can get open down the field, deep down the field.
Definitely. So, Dalton, we said the Travis Hunter one was maybe the most easiest award of all of them. This actually might be, it has a case for the easiest one as well. The Doak Walker Award, given to the best running back in college football, and this is a slam dunk pick.
Absolutely. When you have a guy that might challenge Barry Sanders' rushing record, it's who you have to pick, and that's Ashton Jeanty from Boise State. How about the group of 5 get represented in these awards? But no, Jeanty, just an unreal year. We've seen he runs with power, he runs with speed. He's averaging 9.9 yards per carry. He's got a 98.5 rushing grade, which would be obviously a new PFF record. 56 missed tackles forced. I mean, in some of these games, he's not even hardly playing in the second half. He could have 1,500 or 1,600 yards by now. And this is a guy who, before the season, told us he was talking about 2,500 total yards and 20 touchdowns. Well, he's certainly pacing the yardage, and he already has 17 touchdowns of the 20. So he might break that this week against UNLV. But you talk about Ashton Jeanty. Not only has he been the best running back in college football, he's been one of the best players in college football. I think as far as some of the awards, it could come down to whether or not Boise makes the playoffs. But my favorite stat to me, honestly, is 914 yards after contact. That number alone would be third in the nation in rushing behind himself and Caleb Johnson. I mean, Ashton Jeanty is a cheat code, is really what it comes down to. And again, we've talked about this before. The craziest part of all of it is he is the best receiving back in the country, and we just haven't seen it yet because they haven't targeted him in their offense. He's the best dual threat back in the country. He's the best running back in the country. He's one of the best players in the country. And honestly, I think he's barreling his way towards a first-round pick in the NFL draft.
I can't believe, like you said, that he's the best receiving back in America. And if you told me that, hey, you'd be giving out the Doak Walker Award midseason to Ashton Jeanty, I'd be like, oh, wow, what is he doing in the receiving game? And you're like, no, he's doing nothing in the receiving game. It's like, wow, that makes no sense to me at all, that now he is clearly the best rusher in college football and is still the best receiver as well. We are witnessing history with Ashton Jeanty. And spoiler, we'll be talking about him in just a second as well for the big one at the end. Next one to talk about, though, Dalton, is the Davey O'Brien Award, given out to best quarterback in college football. And we went with Cam Ward from Miami. He's currently the highest graded Power 4 quarterback with a 92.3 grade, second highest passing grade in the country at 91.2 as well. He leads the nation in passing yards with 2,538, 24 passing touchdowns. Also leads all players in college football. He has, I believe, 20 big-time throws. He had 20, which is third among all quarterbacks in the nation as well. Cam Ward, and just what he's done in being Superman for this team, because they need him to be Superman. He's needed to pull off comebacks. It seems like every single game so far. Did it against Virginia Tech with a 10-point comeback with like 9 minutes left. He pulled off a 25-point comeback against Cal. He went toe-to-toe with Louisville in an absolute shootout that we are in attendance for as well. Cam Ward has been Superman for Miami this year, and they're right now undefeated in the season, and by far the biggest reason for that is because they have the best quarterback in college football.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think it's going to be a fun race for this award down the stretch when you talk about some other guys, Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, maybe getting in that mix. But no, without Ward, Miami would only have 3 or 4 wins. I mean, that's just a fact. They are 7-0 almost solely because of Cam Ward and those receivers. They've done obviously a really nice job on the other end of that. Xavier Restrepo, Sam Brown, some of those other guys. But Cam Ward is the reason to watch the Miami Hurricanes. He's another one barreling towards a first-round selection. It's just been an incredible jump even from what he was at Washington State, because he was very good, but there was still a lot of mistakes in there. He's cut down the mistakes. He's still making huge plays, and you're right. I mean, he's been the best quarterback in the country this season. I think that's a race, though, that's going to be fun to watch come come the end of the season when you got some of these other guys putting up huge numbers.
Oh, absolutely. Curtis Rourke is right now leading the nation in passing grade. Shedeur Sanders is obviously up there as well. So this definitely going to be a race that comes down to the final seconds. But I've just been so impressed with Dalton, Cam Ward, just how cool, calm, and collected he is. I mean, he knows that, like, if I'm not Superman, we're going to lose this game. And he's still just very nonchalant back there. I mean, he is such an awesome player to watch. We watched him in person at Louisville, and it was crazy what he was doing in that environment, just breaking out of sacks, finding the open receivers, doing crazy arm angles to get throws down the field. I mean, he is such a talented player, and I agree with you. I think he is probably a top 10 pick in the NFL draft now. And we thought going into the year, maybe more like a day 2 pick. You know, I like the upside, but there's a lot of downside still there with him. He's eliminated almost all the downside this year, and now it's like, no, now he's a top 10 pick. Now that's exactly what we think Cam Ward can be. The next one, Dawn, is the Chuck Bednarik Award and the Bronco Nagurski Trophy. We combine the two together because they both go out to the best defensive player in college football. And once again, we're talking about a guy that we talked about a couple times already.
Yeah, no, I think it needs to be said. Not only has he been the best defensive end in college football, he's been the best defensive player in college football. Some of the more traditional metrics might not show you that. He's only got 20 pressures. He's got 5 sacks, 93.7 overall grade, though. Again, Josiah Stewart from Michigan. And this is an award that maybe if we were picking a guy from Michigan before the year, we go, oh, it's going to be Mason Graham, right? Graham's having a fantastic season himself. But Stewart, what he's been doing, the only reason he doesn't have more pressures and sacks and all that is because opposing quarterbacks against Michigan are just getting rid of the football. When you look at up front what they're doing, wrecking offensive lines, they're still doing it at an elite level. And I think the stat that I keep going back to with Stewart is you mentioned about his pass rush win rate. Look, it's silly how high it is. It's in that Latu territory, right? I mean, when you talk about, what was it, a 29% pass rush win rate, when you get guys up into the 20s at all, they're having an amazing season. You get it up towards 30, I mean, it's ridiculous. 28 right now we have right here, but still, that's just, I don't even know how to put into context how good that is, how dominant that is, and the only reason Michigan, their opposing quarterbacks getting rid of the ball in 2.4 seconds on average. It's just the level of dominance they have on the defensive line keeps them in ball games despite their offense, which has been really bad this year, and even a secondary that's not as good as it was last year. This defensive line has been so dominant. We know they're dominant on the inside, but again, Josiah Stewart off the edge and what he's been able to do to disrupt quarterbacks, disrupt games. For comparison, okay, Josiah Stewart this year, 28% pass rush win rate, 26.2 pass rush win rate for Latu last year. And he was clearly the best defensive player in the country. So you're talking about dominance, and you're just talking about a guy who maybe he won't eventually win this award because he won't have the traditional stats, but there's other reasons for that. You put the context into it, Stewart's been elite.
He has been outstanding, and Mason Graham has also been really coming on fire lately as well, so he might be challenging his teammate for this award at the end of the year as well. Dawn, the last one we're giving out is obviously the biggest one. That is the Heisman Trophy, and we'll throw in the Maxwell Award as well because they both go to the best player in college football. We went with Ashton Jeanty, the running back from Boise State. He's currently the second highest graded player in the country with a 96.2 grade, only behind Harold Fenton Jr. right now. But Ashton Jeanty, his stats, dude, are just so ridiculous. You mentioned the rushing grade, 98.5. That's the highest we've ever seen as of right now. 1,248 rushing yards. It's about more than 200 more than anyone else in college football right now. He's on pace in the regular season for 2,500 yards. The record is little over 2,600 from Barry Sanders. 17 rushing touchdowns, like you said. The record is 37, so he's on pace to get 34 and then maybe even more in the postseason. 912 yards after contact. The record is 1,355 by Jonathan Taylor in 2017. So do the math. 912. He's on pace to beat the record by 500 yards in yards after contact. 1,824 rushing yards total would win the Doak Walker Award every single year. I believe Ollie Gordon had 1,800 yards last year, right?
Somewhere around there,
yeah. He's on pace for 1,800 yards after contact, Ashton Jeanty is. 56 broken tackles, so he's on pace for 112 in the regular season. Bijan Robinson holds the record with 104 in 2022. So you're talking about records that are held by guys like Barry Sanders, Jonathan Taylor, Bijan Robinson. The rushing grade is held by Blake Corum. Elite college running backs, and in most cases, elite NFL running backs as well. And Ashton Jeanty is on pace to smash all of those records. So he gets our pick for the Heisman Trophy right now. There are a couple other players I think we should shout out that we think are in the running, and we'll do some Heisman videos throughout the course of the season. But as of right now, we think Ashton Jeanty deserves a Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's been the best offensive player in college football this year. And you're talking about a team that isn't really all that stacked otherwise.
No.
They know who it's going through. The other wild stat to me, other than the yards after contact one, he's only, and this is going to sound like a lot, but when you think about it, it really isn't. He only has 49 carries in the second half of games this year, which is just silly when you think about, okay, in the first half, I think he's got 100. What has he got? I think it's 80-something in the first half of these games. There's 2 games where, 77 carries in the first half, 49 in the second half. There's 2 games where he did not get a single carry in the second half of these games. You could argue if the workload was equal to the first half early in games, he would already be at about 1,500 yards, which then we're talking about shattering records and doing that sort of thing. But Boise State, they're obviously saving him because, one, you don't want to just take all the tread on the tires off him, and 2, they're trying to get in the college football playoff. I mean, we have seen he's good enough to carry them there. They barely lost to Oregon. He had a huge game against Oregon, just like last year against Power 5 teams like Washington and UCLA when he had fantastic games. This is a guy who's trying to carry this team to the playoff, and he's just getting the records along the way. It's amazing what he's been doing. It's going to be a fascinating Heisman race down the stretch, but Jeanty right now has been the best offensive player in college football, really the best player in college football. You talk about a 98.5 rushing grade. That's just silly. I mean, we've obviously never seen that before. What was it? Blake Corum has the previous record of 96.2, was it? I mean, to shatter a record like that by close to 2 points, and you wonder at the end of the day if he keeps doing this, could he have a perfect rushing grade on the year
100.
Could he have a 99.9? Could we break this scale? I would love to see that.
It'd be unbelievable. So, Don, I want to shout out some of the other players we think are close to him right now. I think Travis Hunter deserves a shout out because we have never seen Travis Hunter before. We've never seen a guy be this elite on both sides of the ball. The injuries have made this gap a little bit wider than we thought initially with Travis Hunter. Then he was very close to Ashton Jeanty, and honestly, you flip a coin between the two of them. Now, I would say Ashton Jeanty, as of right now, deserves a Heisman Trophy, but Travis Hunter, for what he's done offensively and defensively, I think deserves a lot of credit for this award as well. And the other one that is right now tied with Ashton Jeanty in betting odds to win the award is Cam Ward, who we mentioned before is the best quarterback in college football and is quite literally just carrying Miami to victories right now. So those are the other 2 players I think are really in the running right now. Maybe Dylan Gabriel from Oregon.
I'll give you one more. I don't think we should forget about that. That's Travis Hunter's quarterback, Shedeur Sanders.
You think he'd do it? I don't know if they would do him.
Why not? Sure.
I know he's been
especially
great.
If Hunter's going to be banged up down the stretch.
If he's banged up, but I think if he's healthy, they're going to give it to Travis over.
But that offense isn't just Travis Hunter.
No, it's not.
Either.
Definitely not.
They've won, especially their last game against Arizona with LaJohntay Wester carrying the load. I mean, I don't think we should forget now about Shedeur Sanders in this mix, completing 71.1% of his passes. Third in the nation in overall grade among quarterbacks behind Ward and Navy quarterback Blake Horvath, and that's a different thing with the rushing. So if you think about, okay, if Cam Ward's first, I think Shedeur is second, and he's really not that far behind him. All it takes is a week or 2 to slip up, and you slip in that race. But I think you mentioned it right with Dylan Gabriel. There's probably some other dark horses, but I think Shedeur is a guy that we should not forget about. I know all the talk is Hunter and everything he's doing, but Shedeur, those to me right now, I think it shows in the grading, and I think for the grading, the draft, everything else, I think Cam and Shedeur, you and I both agree that they're the 2 best quarterbacks in the country right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And listen, when I'm looking at this award, though, I'm thinking, okay, Ashton Jeanty's doing historic stuff. Travis Hunter's doing historic stuff. Cam Ward's doing great stuff for a quarterback, but we've seen seasons like this for a quarterback before.
Sure, we had 4 or 5 of them last season.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So it's like you look at it and like, dude, just the history part of it, like I think it should be down to Ashton Jeanty and Travis Hunter. Obviously, a long way to go for the rest of the season.
Long way to go.
But what we're seeing from those 2, I'd put them on a different level than any other player.
The fun part is, I think, and we'll see if Colorado comes into a disadvantage, or maybe they won't with this, is who gets into a conference title game, who gets that extra game to prove it, and who first of all, winning a Power 4 conference likely gets you in that top 4 seed, and then for even a team like Boise, where you go, could making the playoff be the difference between
if they don't make the
winning
playoff
it or not?
If they don't make the playoff, then I don't know if he gets this award.
Right, because we're pretty darn sure he's going to New York. He's at least going to be sitting there watching it. But it could be the difference for a lot of these teams. Maybe even a Colorado. They're not out of this. They're not out of this yet. They've got 2 losses, but they're squarely in Big 12 contention right now. I think that could be a big factor now that we have, because I think last year it was something that we were kind of pleading for them to take out of it when it came to Jaden Daniels winning it, where it was like, look, we know LSU's not making one of the 4 best teams in the country. We know they went 9-3, but this is the best player in the country. This year, I think with a 12-team playoff, you could make a little more of a case, especially for Jeanty, where you go, he's the reason they're there, no question. Or even Cam Ward, he's the reason that they would get there. So I think it makes for an interesting tiebreaker once we get down to it.
It'll be really, really interesting. That's what we got for our college football mid-season awards. Obviously, a long way to go. The whole second half of the season before we actually give out the real awards at the end. But kind of a good, just see where players are after the end of the first half of the season. But we have our Week 9 review show on Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Make sure you guys tune in for that. We're going to go over the biggest games, including some of these players that we talk about in Week 9. So Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Make sure you subscribe to the channel as well so you don't miss any of our live shows on Tuesdays and Sundays or any of these bonus videos like this one right here. But for Dalton Wassman, I'm Max Chadwick. We'll see you guys on Sunday morning for our Week 9 review show.